which is how to secure and manage your environment in a post-COVID world. First up, we have Dean Bastador. Dean is a senior engineer, Microsoft Cloud at Red Level. In his role, Dean leads technical projects, develops detailed work plans, and builds documentation, then architects and delivers technical Microsoft solutions. He is also crucial in educating and consulting clients on all Microsoft products, features, and capabilities. Our other session speaker is Mitch McCullum. Mitch is a Microsoft Cloud analyst here at Red Level. In his role, Mitch works with clients to develop secure solutions to enhance their environment and requirements. He helps clients conduct gap analysis on their current security and compliance controls compared to where they need to be for certifications such as NIST, COBIT, ISO, IEC 2701. He works with the Microsoft 365 Security Suite with specializations in Intune, Azure Security Center, and Microsoft 365 compliance. Without further ado, Dean and Mitch, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Megan. My name is Dean Bastador. I've been working at Red Level for a couple of years now, just about. Prior to that, I was at CDH for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and then before that, internal IT. So today I'll be talking about what I've been doing a lot of, especially this last year, which is helping clients securely manage devices and access data, and really kind of think cloud first. Especially this year, more than others with work from home orders and things like that. So the case study that I'll be talking about is First State Bank. So let you get those slide. All right, so First State Bank is near and dear to my heart. I've worked with them for several years on several different projects, big and small. Great group of people over there, really nice people. So their headquarters is in Macomb County, Michigan. They've got 12 branches, sort of in the lower East Michigan area. So they're serving that area of Michigan. Like I said, just great group of people. So next slide. Some of their business challenges this year were like many, where COVID-19 hit, and they had a workforce that suddenly had to go home and work. And so a little background on them is they were sort of that traditional IT model where sort of like a castle moat kind of scenario, where users would come into the office, they would do their work on desktop computers or on their devices on the network, and then if they had to work late, they would just kind of stay in the office a couple hours, then head home, and that was done. So banking hours and such. So there was a VPN and some remote worker capability there, but it was kind of special use cases. So not everybody knew how to do it, and not everybody was issued laptops. So mostly, like I said, just castle moat. All the data is in the castle. We build a moat around it in the form of firewalls and physical security. And if you get in the building, you can get on the network. Bandwidth is great. Performance is nice. You can access everything. But when you leave, you're pretty much done for the day, aside from maybe, getting email on your phone or, some things like that. So when the order came down that, these office workers now had to go home, they were put in this situation where their workers they didn't have laptops. They didn't really have devices to work from home, first of all. Their VPN wasn't really set up for everybody working over it, so they had some challenges that came up. So the first of which really was, how do we get laptops? Because toilet paper wasn't really like the only thing that had a shortage back then. So they went through their normal channels. They're calling their vendor, hey, we need 30 laptops tomorrow. What can you do for us? And there's no laptops. So they had to get creative. So I believe what they ended up doing was they hopped in their cars, drove around town, hit up Best Buy, probably Walmart, wherever. They're just grabbing laptops, getting them back to the office, wiping them, putting their software on them, putting the VPN software on there, and then just kind of handing them out to workers and saying, okay, now you can get back to work. And so that's kind of how they approached that, and they did what they had to do. So it was pretty interesting. So right away, there's a lot of issues that came from that. And maybe I'll kind of explain what VPN is. So it's virtual private network. So essentially it's, if I'm at home and I need to connect to Work's network, how do I get my home device on Work's network so I can get my work stuff? So, that's where VPN comes in. So you have software on your work computer that you're using at home. You authenticate, kind of validate who you are, or you are who you say you are. Once you've gone through that, this device now connects to that network over this, encrypted tunnel that traverses the internet. So, and that's fine. So if you think of like your home situation, you might have like you and the kids, everyone's sitting on their smartphones. We might be streaming, playing video games, whatever. There's plenty of bandwidth, not a big deal, right? But then if you invite the neighbor kids and maybe the entire neighborhood onto your internet, you're not going to be able to stream anymore. So there's no gaming. Everyone's unhappy. It's horrible. It's time to go outside and play. There's, we can't use the internet now. So it's very similar kind of situation where, the VPN was set up for a handful of users, and now we've got all these users trying to use it, trying to get work done. So, and to make matters worse, the way that they were managing these laptops and devices are, castle moat style. So you have a server on-prem, and it looks at the laptops that are on-prem and connected to the network, and it says, hey, you're missing these updates. I'm just going to push them over the network. There's plenty of bandwidth, not a big deal. Also, we've got another server on-prem that's looking at laptop configuration and just kind of making sure the laptop's healthy, making sure that it's compliant, that its policies are in place. That works great on-prem, but once you got all these laptops going over VPN, trying to pull down security policies, compliance policies, get updates, it's just further making that problem worse, where we don't have enough bandwidth to begin with, and now you're pushing updates and everything else over that same pipe. It's just, it was just bad experience. So IT tickets started coming in, just everyone's having a bad experience. We can't get work done. This is horrible, so Red Level got engaged to kind of help them figure out a solution. So the first thing we wanted to address was you can't get laptops. So you hire some people. How are you going to give them devices so that they can get work done if you've got 3-week back orders or longer? So, so say they hire somebody and they say, okay, you're hired. Here's how you access the systems, but you don't have a computer. But you're going to have to work from home. So we addressed that by setting up a kind of a landing zone or infrastructure in Azure that connected back to their on-prem. And then what we did was we installed some servers and a service called Azure Windows Virtual Desktop. And what that is essentially is it's remote desktop services, or terminal server if you're familiar with that. But essentially it's from a device, you're using some software to get remote control over a computer. So it's not your computer connecting to the network. You're connecting to a computer that's on the network and sort of remotely controlling that. So, and it could be one server or it could be a pool of servers. So, and the beauty of, having Azure is if you got 5 people using that service, maybe you have, 1 or 2 servers running. If you have 30 people or more, then you can scale that out and add more servers to the pool and sort of spread that performance load. So that was the first thing that we wanted to get up for them. So we created an image, installed their software, deployed WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop, and had some of their users install the client. The client could work from a smartphone, it can work from a Mac, Windows, doesn't really matter. And what's great about it also is that, again, it's not the device connecting over the VPN to the network. So we don't know how mom is managing her computer. She probably has ransomware, viruses, God knows what on there, and we don't want that connected to our network. So we're going to put some software on there where she can connect and connect to a server that we know is healthy, and that can connect to our services. And also we're going to make her do MFA or some other challenges to make sure she is who she says she is, to be able to connect to that service. So that was the first thing we did. The second thing we did was we got those laptops enrolled in Intune. So that's actually Microsoft Endpoint Manager now, but used to be Intune. But anyway, so we got their devices in there so that we could start pushing down Windows updates and security policies and checking compliance, we could do that over the internet without the need for VPN. So as long as the device is on the internet, they could just be at home sitting on the internet. Intune's able to communicate with that device and say, hey, you're missing updates. Hey, you turned off your firewall. We're going to turn it back on. Hey, don't download that. So IT could get control of those devices that were given away to those workers at home. So so that was really what we did for them in terms of the case study. So they were able to now manage devices. They were able to connect to WVD, get work resources when they needed them, and then also give IT control control back in their hands to be able to manage those devices and kind of validate who's connecting to their network. So moving forward, we've talked to them, and they may be expanding out these services more, because the more and more we use this kind of stuff, it's like, well, do we even really need these devices to be on the network at all? So it's we're talking about maybe just doing Azure AD join versus domain join or hybrid join, but those are the sort of technical details. But it really has like great benefit in terms of like DR, business continuity use cases. So, but yeah, that kind of concludes my case study. So.
All right,
Cool.
Next up we have Mitch.
Awesome. Thanks, Dean, for that. And thank you, Megan, for the introductions and the kind love. So for the remainder of our case studies, we're going to focus and showcase on a company called Raker Roberta's. Raker Roberta's is in the agriculture industry and is the leading producer of grown-to-order plugs and liners. As one of the largest propagation greenhouses in North America, Raker Roberta's utilizes seed and vegetative propagation, and they list over 3,200 plant varieties available to customers around the planet. We have had the absolute pleasure of working very closely with their IT department in helping shape and secure their cloud footprint. Here are a couple fun facts about them. Raker Roberta's was founded in 1978. Their corporate office and greenhouses cover over 400,000 square feet in Litchfield, Michigan. They have nearly 100 full-time employees and an additional 150 seasonal employees who assist throughout their growing season. Without further ado, let's dig into some of the business challenges that they faced and how we addressed and resolved them. During their migration to Office 365, Raker Roberta's employees were exposed to new types of cyber attacks that required a different approach for defending against. As a smaller IT department, most of their time was consumed with end user requests, such as password resets or account logouts. They wanted to ensure that their cloud security posture was aligned with the best industry practices. This business challenge was broken into 3 different sections. The first section, high risk for identity-based attacks. What does this mean? Traditional perimeter-based network defense is becoming obsolete. Network firewalls are no longer protecting your company's assets and data. As Raker Roberta's found out with COVID-19, users are no longer working inside of the office. They could be on a company laptop, a personal laptop, a mobile phone, or even a tablet device across the entire world. In a post-COVID-19 world, we anticipate organizations will continue to work in a hybrid approach, meaning employees will have the flexibility as to where, how, and where they are working. As our world keeps changing, so do our IT and security processes. We need to protect identities and how those identities are connecting to cloud services. Our next section, legacy authentication protocols. What are legacy authentication protocols? These are protocols that at one point were considered standard and secure, but have since been depreciated and linked to security concerns. The end users at Raker Roberta's, they use email on a daily basis. As email is an application that is constantly being used, it should be protected. Only reliable, secure, and approved authentication protocols should be granted to applications with sensitive identities. And then our last section, forcing IT administrators to carry out end user password resets. The Raker Roberta's IT team has a busy schedule. We all do. As a smaller IT department, they have found themselves focusing on end user requests, such as password lockouts and account resets. Freeing up their day from these types of requests was a necessity and a feature that they were looking to obtain with making the move to Office 365. Next slide, please. Red Level worked with the Raker Roberta's IT team to deploy and configure Azure Active Directory to address the various cloud business challenges that they were facing. The first challenge that we helped the Raker team address was high-risk identity-based attacks. To protect and mitigate against these types of threats and attacks, we enabled and configured Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, or Azure MFA for short. Multi-factor authentication is a process where a user is prompted during the sign-in process for an additional form of identification, such as entering a code on their cell phone or providing a fingerprint scan. Azure Multi-Factor Authentication works by requiring 2 or more of the following authentication methods. One could be something you know. This is typically a password. 2, something you have, such as a trusted device that is not easily duplicated, like a cell phone. Or 3, something you are. These are biometrics, like a fingerprint scan or facial recognition. When you require a second form of authentication, security is increased, as this additional factor isn't something that's easy for an attacker to obtain or duplicate. This Azure solution was deployed through the Azure portal and enabled by the Microsoft Authenticator app on end users' iOS and Android devices. Once we installed the app, Raker Roberta's users attempting to sign into the Microsoft Cloud services, such as Exchange Online or the Microsoft portal, on untrusted networks were prompted with additional authentication requests. The Raker IT team decided to set their HQ location as a trusted location. This meant that if a user was attempting to sign into Office 365 from here, they would never be prompted for an MFA request. Multi-factor authentication policies can further be configured to only prompt when the login request is coming from a risky location, a risky device, or a combination of both. Azure MFA is a great first step at combating identity-based attacks, and Raker made the right choice. Legacy authentication protocols. I want to really touch base quickly on this. The next challenge we helped the Raker team address was blocking legacy authentication protocols. Legacy authentication refers to protocols that use basic authentication. Typically, these protocols can't enforce any type of second factor authentication. According to an analysis of Azure AD, over 99% of password spray attacks use legacy authentication. To accomplish blocking legacy authentication protocols in the Raker's environment, we configured a conditional access policy through the Azure portal. This policy blocked Exchange ActiveSync clients and other unsupported clients from accessing Raker's Office 365 apps. After configuring and enabling the conditional access policy, only supported and secure authentication requests were allowed in. Remember, identity is the new security perimeter. Keeping identity secure with additional authentication requirements makes it more difficult and expensive for hackers. And last, forcing IT administrators to carry out end user password resets. Self-service password reset gives users the ability to change or reset their own password with no administrator or help desk involvement. If a user's account is locked out or they have forgotten their password, they could follow prompts to unblock themselves and get back to work. This ability reduces help desk calls as loss of productivity when a user can't sign in to their apps or devices. We enabled and configured Azure Active Directory self-service password reset for the end users at Raker Roberta's. After users began the process of unlocking their account or resetting their password on their own, they're prompted for an additional confirmation method, such as a mobile app notification through the Microsoft Authenticator app. Verifying that authenticated users are making requests keeps identities safe and secure. Next slide, please. As the can we actually go back a slide? Thank you. As the Raker Roberta's team continues to move more and more solutions from on-premises to the public cloud, they can be rest assured that their end user identities are being protected, monitored, and maintained using Azure Active Directory. The first major step in securing their identities was implementing Azure multi-factor authentication. Azure multi-factor authentication helps safeguard data and applications while maintaining a simplicity for users. During this configuration and onboarding process, we were able to instruct Raker Roberta's employees to install the Microsoft Authenticator app on their mobile devices. Once the application was installed, users were prompted for additional authentication requests when they are outside of their HQ office in Litchfield, Michigan. When they sign into Office 365 applications with their username and password, a notification was sent to their phone, and all they needed to do was approve the request. This will better secure their identities, as it is an extra hoop that the bad guys will need to jump through. After we deployed Azure multi-factor authentication, we were able to configure conditional access policies. From the previous slide, we learned that more than 99% of password spray attacks use legacy authentication protocols. After we blocked legacy authentication, common and basic password spray attacks are no longer a major worry for the Raker IT team, and they can now focus their energy elsewhere. Lastly, self-service password reset has given the Raker Roberta's end users the ability to reset and unlock their own accounts without having to submit help desk tickets or worry about SLAs. This ability reduces the loss of productivity as both sides of the aisle can continue to work on their day-to-day operations. Next slide, please. So our next case study and our next business challenge. In our next case study with the Raker Roberta's team, we addressed and solved a major business challenge that changed the way that the Raker IT team deploys, manages, and maintains their end user devices. In the early stages of the COVID-19 quarantine, end users began to take their work devices home with them. After devices started to leave the HQ network and not return for quite some time, the Raker IT team realized that patching end user devices while employees stayed home would not be feasible due to current on-premises limitations. As keeping Windows devices up to date with current patches and drivers is critical for a successful business or security program, Raker Roberta's needed to find a solution. I want to talk briefly, just a couple of the limitations that they were faced with. The first one, WSUS not working with employees working remotely. There's a lot of jargon in there, but I'm going to do my best to explain that. As I stated before, keeping Windows devices up to date with current patches and drivers is critical. Vulnerabilities and exploits are discovered on a daily basis, and IT administrators need to ensure that their devices are continuously being patched and secured. In Raker Roberta's internal network, they use a local server called Windows Server Update Services, WSUS for short. WSUS is used to distribute and deploy the latest Microsoft product updates. For end user devices to receive these updates, they must be connected to the internal network where WSUS is located. In Raker's case, as more and more devices were being used at home instead of in the office where WSUS is less devices were compliant with critical updates. Our next point, manual effort to image devices and deploy applications. Deploying end user devices, re-imaging current end user devices, and deploying business applications is no easy feat. If late last year, Raker Roberta's decided to roll out new devices or adopt new applications, there would have been a manual process involved. There was no intuitive way to image devices or deploy applications. The Raker team needed to have manually logged into each device, install the application, verify functionality, and hand back the device to the end user. I need to stress this because I've done it a lot in my career. This is a manual process for each device that they manage. This became a huge business challenge, especially during the COVID-19 quarantine. The Raker IT team wanted a better process for these activities. Next, the lack of centralized device inventory and reporting. Raker Roberta's lacked a basic device inventory and had no reporting capabilities. Device inventory was a manual process, and that could even result in human error. As devices update their Windows versions, their hard drive storage information, available memory, or other various hardware statistics, there was no clear and easy way for the Raker IT team to accomplish this. They were looking for a solution that had capabilities to constantly scan for hardware changes and report on its findings. And then our last point, outdated signature-based antivirus protection. This business challenge, this last business challenge that the Raker Roberta's team faced was regarding their end user devices and their antivirus protection. Prior to migrating to Office 365 in the public cloud, they were using a signature-based antivirus that was not considered next-gen. Next-gen is marketing jargon of a smarter antivirus that does more than a signature-based detection. It's looking for anomalies and it's looking for human behavior. The Raker IT team wanted a solution that would adapt with the past, the present, and the future vulnerabilities and exploits that were coming their way. Next slide, please. So what do we do to help address all of these situations? The Red Level works with the Raker IT team to enroll their end user devices into Microsoft Intune for centralized device management. What is Microsoft Intune? As Dean noted earlier, Microsoft Intune is now known as Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So it's a cloud-based service that focuses on mobile device management and mobile application management. You control how your organization's devices are used, which could include laptops, desktops, tablets, and even mobile phones. You can configure specific policies to control applications as well. In Microsoft Intune, you manage devices using an approach that's right for your organization. Once we enrolled all of Raker Roberta's end user devices into Microsoft Intune, we had full visibility of each device and began to conduct device management. So now that the devices are enrolled in Intune, we have a whole bunch of capabilities. Our first step was to address the patching issue. So on the previous slide, I discussed, the major
Mitch, it seems like you might have accidentally muted yourself.
I sure did. I accidentally moved my arm the wrong way.
Hate when that happens.
When that happens, cool. I'll take it back to Windows Update for Business. So on the previous slide, I discussed a major business challenge that the Raker team was facing. WSUS was not working with employees working remotely. Through Microsoft Intune, we can configure and deploy what is known as Windows Update for Business. Windows Update for Business enables IT administrators to keep the Windows 10 devices in their organization always up to date with the latest security defenses and Windows features by directly connecting these systems to Microsoft directly. This means that end user devices at Raker Roberta's no longer needed to be connected to their internal network to receive their Windows patches and updates. We configured Windows Update for Business for Raker Roberta's in 2 separate policies. One policy was for standard end users, and then the other policy was for IT testing purposes. It's always best practice to deploy new security patches and updates to a test group prior to rolling out to your entire organization. This was no different for Raker Roberta's and their team. In both policies, we were able to select which servicing channel to use, whether to automatically update Microsoft products, and whether to automatically update Windows drivers. Windows Update for Business is working very well for Raker Roberta's. Their IT department no longer stresses about Windows updates and patching because it is now happening behind the scenes. Now that end user devices are enrolled into Intune and they're being patched, we can roll out applications and reimage devices with a couple of clicks. Microsoft Intune supports a wide range of application types, such as applications from the Windows Store, applications that are built into the device directly, and line of business applications. There is no need to manually deploy applications while using Microsoft Intune. Simply add your application to the Microsoft Intune portal, specify the distinct app information, and set assignments to your applicable users. It's that easy. This capability helped Raker Roberta's IT team deploy applications and will continue to do so today. On top of automatically deploying applications, you can also automate imaging end user devices through Windows Autopilot in Microsoft Intune. Windows Autopilot is a collection of technologies used to set up and pre-configure new devices or to get them ready for production use. You could use Windows Autopilot to reset, repurpose, or recover devices in failed states. When initially deploying new Windows devices, Windows Autopilot uses the OEM optimized version of Windows 10. This version is pre-installed on the device, so you don't need to maintain custom images and drivers for each and every device model that you have in your environment. Instead of reimaging the device, your existing Windows 10 installation can be transformed into a business ready state. In the chances of a new hire starting during or after the COVID-19 quarantine, the IT team at Raker Roberta's can remotely reset an unused device to repurpose it for a new hire. There is no need to manually log into the device. After a couple of clicks, that device will be in a fresh state and will be ready to be used by the new owner. And our last point, Microsoft Defender. The last set of policies that we configured for the Raker Roberta's team surrounded Microsoft Defender, which is being used as their antivirus protection for their end user devices. During their transition and enrollment into Microsoft Intune, we were able to deploy Microsoft Defender and use Microsoft Intune to manage and monitor security events on their end user devices. When we configured this policy, we turned on real-time protection, behavior monitoring, network protection. We also scanned all downloaded files and attachments and emails. Using Microsoft Defender, IT administrators have complete control over the antivirus piece of device security, and they can configure settings as to when scans occur, what actions to take based on detected threats, and even submit samples to Microsoft for further analysis. Next slide, please. So what was the business outcome? Raker Roberta's IT department uses Microsoft Intune as their centralized device management solution. Whether end users are working from in the office or at home, end user devices are continuously being monitored, patched, and secured. Microsoft Intune provides a patch strategy that has helped the Raker team and their end user to keep their end user devices safe and secure. There is no need for devices to remain on the network for their patching. Devices can be anywhere in the world, and they will receive the attention that they need just as long as the device is online and accessible from the internet. Microsoft Intune also provides a consistent approach to deploying new applications and imaging devices. Pre-COVID-19, the Raker IT team needed to physically connect to each device to deploy new applications or image devices for new hires. Windows Autopilot reduces the time that their IT department will spend on deploying, managing, and retiring devices. Last, Microsoft Defender has saved the Raker Roberta's team over $3,000 in the course of this year. Jim Winchell, Information Systems Team Lead at Raker Roberta's, told us that we have been able to save approximately $3,000 annually by switching from a third-party antivirus product to Microsoft Defender. He also says Microsoft Defender integrates nicely with Intune and other products that Microsoft offers, so we can gain insight into what our users are doing and where we need to adjust to keep our data safe. Next slide, please. Our last case study. So this business challenge, very interesting. So as a global supplier in the greenhouse industry, email security is an important topic for the Raker Roberta's team. All team members primarily use email for external communications across the entire world. Email security is a major focus as they participate and send multiple email campaigns throughout the calendar year. The Raker team stressed the importance of keeping their email secure and to proactively mitigate and protect against threats. A big challenge that they were facing regarding email security was a limited email protection tool that did not protect against modern threats. The tool they were using prior to our engagement was a simple email filtering tool that did not include AI or heuristic capabilities. As threats are becoming more and more sophisticated, the technology protecting our data and assets needs to advance. Migrating to a modern cloud-based filtering service with rich user interfaces interested the Raker Roberta's team. Another challenge that they were faced with was a lack of reporting and message tracing abilities. The ability to troubleshoot where an email failed in transport or which mailbox the email was delivered to was not a current feature that the Raker Roberta's team had access to. They also wanted to have more reporting visibility into their email environment, such as the number of emails sent, the number of emails received, mailbox usages, and enhanced reports regarding sensitive data and emails. Next slide, please. Red Level worked with the Raker Roberta's IT team to migrate their on-premises Exchange environment to Exchange Online. After this migration, we were able to configure and deploy Exchange Online Protection and Microsoft Defender for Office 365. These two solutions provided email security policies for all of their mailboxes. So what is Exchange Online Protection? Exchange Online Protection is the cloud-based filtering service that helps protect your organization against spam and malware. I'm going to run through a quick scenario to show you how it works. First, when an incoming message enters Exchange Online Protection, it initially passes through connection filtering, which checks the sender's reputation. Most of the spam is stopped at this point and rejected by Exchange Online Protection. Next, the message is inspected for signs of malware. If malware is found in the message or in any of the email attachments, the message is routed to an admin-only quarantine store. When messages are sent to this quarantine, only administrators can view, release, or delete the email. Then, the message will continue through policy filtering, where the message is evaluated against custom mail flow rules, also known as transport rules. And lastly, the message passes through content filtering, also known as anti-spam. A message that this filter determines to be spam can be sent to quarantine or the end user's junk email folder. Any message that passes all of these protection layers is successfully delivered to the recipient. This is how Exchange Online Protection works and protects individuals from receiving malicious or suspicious emails. Inside of Exchange Online Protection are various policies that protect mailboxes and end users. Here are some of the largest policies that are configurable. I'm going to start with the anti-spam policy. To help reduce junk email, Exchange Online Protection includes junk email protection that uses proprietary spam filtering technologies to identify and separate junk email from legitimate email. Exchange Online Protection spam filtering learns from known spam and phishing threats. It's continuously learning. Inside of this policy, you can configure connection filtering, content filtering, outbound spam filtering, and spoof intelligence. It's a really sharp and smart tool. The next is the anti-phishing policy. So phishing is an attack that tries to steal sensitive information in a message that appears to be from a legitimate or a trusted sender. With the growing complexity of attacks, it's difficult for even trained users to identify sophisticated phishing messages. The anti-phishing policy reviews spoofed messages from senders in internal and external domains and allows or blocks those senders. And then we have the anti-malware policy. Exchange Online Protection offers multi-layered malware protection that is designed to catch all known malware traveling into or out of an organization. This policy provides multiple scan engines to help protect against both known and unknown threats. The engines include powerful heuristic detections to provide protection even during the early stages of a malware outbreak. Anti-malware protection also provides real-time threat response. So I'm going to jump. We discussed Exchange Online Protection. Now I want to talk about Microsoft Defender for Office 365. This one's not going to be as long. It sounds the same. The anti-phishing policy are in both, but they're two different policies. So we also configured the anti-phishing policy from the Microsoft Defender Office 365. This policy is different as it includes additional anti-impersonation settings, such as mailbox intelligence settings and adjustable advanced phishing thresholds. The cool feature that I want to call out in this policy is called the attack simulator. Administrators can create fake phishing messages and send them to internal users as an education tool. So on the previous slide, I discussed the different challenges that the Raker team was addressing with email. And the last point I made was message tracing abilities. So this last point, the Raker team didn't have a way to trace messages and troubleshoot. Office 365 includes message tracing abilities. So what is it? So as an administrator, you can find out what happened to an email message by running a message trace in the Exchange Admin Center. After running the message trace, you can view the results in a list and the details about a specific message. I just wanted to note that message trace data is available only for 90 days. When running a message trace, you've got the ability to search based on specific fields, such as the date range when a message was sent or received, its delivery status of the email message, the sender, or the recipient. You can even get more granular with including the subject line in the search. This feature allows IT administrators the ability to further troubleshoot email messages. Next slide, please. So what was the business outcome? After we migrated Raker Roberta's email from on-premises to Exchange Online, they have unlocked advanced capabilities to protect their end users against emerging email threats. Making this transition to the cloud will better protect their email from phishing, spoofing, and impersonation threats. They no longer second-guess their email security solution. Exchange Online Protection replaced their previous content filtering tool. The tool they were using prior to their email migration to the cloud was outdated and did not adapt to current cybersecurity attacks and threats. Exchange Online Protection runs on a worldwide network of data centers that are designed to provide the best availability. For example, if a data center becomes unreliable, email messages are automatically routed to another data center without any interruption in service. Servers in each data center accept messages on your behalf, providing a layer of separation between your organization and the internet, thereby reducing the load on your servers. If Raker Roberta's previous content filtering tool ever failed, there was no redundancy to ensure that their email would remain online and functional. This would not be ideal due to the nature of their business. Migrating to the cloud has advanced their security, redundancy, and monitoring capabilities for email at Raker Robertus. Jim Winchell provided a quote regarding his experience with switching to Exchange Online Protection. He said, switching to Exchange Online Protection has drastically reduced the number of emails to our users that are considered high-risk threats, such as phishing scams, messages containing attached viruses, and overall spam volume. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mitch and Dean. Great presentation on why security is so important and what you can do about it. We are going to open things up for Q&A. Again, if you have a question, feel free to put it into the question panel. But that being said, let's get going on these questions. So first off, this first question was for Dean's case study. So Dean, what's the difference between Azure Windows Virtual Desktop and standard remote desktop services?
WVD is better. No,
Okay.
it's no, it's so in a standard remote desktop services infrastructure, you'll have a connection broker, your gateway services, your licensing services, and then your session hosts. So, and those are all servers that you have to stand up and manage on your own. So in a WVD scenario, the gateway, the connection broker, and the licensing, that's all a service that Microsoft handles. So the only thing you're managing are the session hosts. So you may have an image, software that you're deploying to those, but really it's just managing the session hosts and user access to those. And another kind of subtle but important difference is the operating system that the session hosts use. So in a typical remote desktop services environment, you'll be running Windows Server. So it would be like Windows Server 2016 or any of the versions really. But so you're going to see things like Server Manager. Some of the UI elements will be a little different, not as nice really. Some applications may even have trouble running in that environment because they may be dependent on some Windows 10 services to run properly. So with WVD, it's a true Windows 10 operating system. So it's a specialized version, so it's called multi-session Windows 10, but it is Windows 10. So you can run all those Windows 10 apps and you get that full sort of like Windows 10 client experience.
Okay. This question is for Mitch's group of case studies. Will my organization be charged for sending phone calls and text messages that are used for Azure multi-factor authentication?
It's a good one. It's a good one. Nope, you won't. You won't be charged for the individual phone calls that are either placed or any of the text messages that are sent to your users through Azure multi-factor authentication. With that said, though, I do want to note that your end users may be charged for the phone calls or text messages that they received, but that's all based on their personal phone service. Azure multi-factor authentication, though, is no added cost.
Okay. Another question for Dean. So Dean, are all of the on-premises group policies available in Intune? And you should definitely take yourself off mute first.
Sorry about that. So yeah, the answer is no. So you're not managing your devices through group policy when they're in Intune. However, many of the settings that are available through group policy are also available in Intune. In addition, there are some tools that you can use that will look at the group policies that you're applying to an OU, and it'll map those to the equivalent Intune policy. So they're not the same. Some of those settings may not be there, but they're always adding additional settings, constantly. Recently, they announced that you can now upload ADMX files into Intune. So A lot of those like group policy templates can be uploaded into Intune, so you do get those settings there. It's not a typical Intune setting where you're creating a policy through the GUI. It's more of a policy through code or a custom type of policy. But so no and yes. I mean, it's not group policy in Intune, but there are ways to bridge the gap.
Okay. Next question up is for Mitch again. Can I enroll more than just Windows devices into Microsoft Intune?
So that's a good question. So I know I just covered in the case of Reika Roberta's situation. I know I talked about Windows devices. Bottom line, yes, you can enroll more than just Windows into Microsoft Intune. You can also enroll Android devices, iOS devices. You have a field day with all these different device vendors and get them all in one centralized location. You can configure specific configuration profiles and compliance profiles for each vendor in your environment. For example, your Windows configuration profiles aren't going to be the same as your Apple and vice versa. Another good thing to note is to verify your device's operating system and make sure that you're up to date and your device is able to be enrolled into Intune for device management.
Okay. Let's see, another question that came in for Mitch. Will Exchange Online Protection work with legacy Exchange versions and non-Exchange environments?
Another really good one. Yes, bottom line, yes. Exchange Online Protection is server agnostic, and it can be used with any SMTP mail transfer agent.
Okay. Well, I would like to say thank you to both Mitch and Dean for their time.